Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here, members of the press, and thank you all that are tuning in on the various platforms. Today, I would really like to take this opportunity to speak directly to my constituents of West Bay South, to my fellow West Bayers, and to the country as a whole. Let me start by saying that it has been an absolute honor and privilege serving as your MLA and now MP for the past 8 years. Indeed, it has been an honor and privilege serving the country as a member of the cabinet during my entire tenure as a parliamentarian. Together, we have made history time and time again. I'm so proud of what we have accomplished. We not only broke the mold of West Bay politics, we shattered it. In 2013, I embarked on a journey to serve the country at a crucial point in our history. Caymanian unemployment was at a record high of 10.5%. The economy was stagnant, and business confidence was very low. Since taking office in 2013, I have ensured that action was taken to address some of the critical challenges facing our country. Working as a member of the cabinet during these past 8 years, I have delivered on the promises made both in 2013 and in 2017. Since 2013, I have been blessed and privileged to serve at the highest level of government. My goal of bringing about positive change at the national level, helping to steer the country back to prosperity and stability, and helping to navigate the many challenges over the years have all been fulfilled. Although my entire political career so far has involved serving the country at the national level in cabinet, I have also focused on serving the District of West Bay and my constituency of West Bay South by implementing many needed district-level enhancements and establishing various community events over the years. As many of you have experienced firsthand, with the support of my truly amazing and selfless organizing committee, I was able to organize and host what became the hugely popular annual Old Time New Year Family Fun Day held every year on New Year's Day since the 1st of January 2014 and every year since. Except this year, of course, due to the COVID-19 restrictions in place at the time. Hundreds of people around West Bay and around the country as a whole would come out year after year to bring in the new year in good old-fashioned Cayman style, enjoying traditional games, crafts, and activities that celebrate our Caymanian heritage. Every year we uplifted the community, bringing together many generations of West Bayers in the spirit of fellowship and festiveness. The event was indeed fun for the young and young at heart. In addition, with the support of the government, I have been instrumental in addressing needed improvements throughout the district, including, but not limited to, upgrading classrooms, playground equipment, and other facilities at the Sir John A. Cumber Primary School, improving the health and safety of fire officers, working at the West Bay Fire Station by upgrading and repairing the building, enhancing the availability of crosswalks throughout the district, creating safer pedestrian access to the Sir John A. Cumber Primary School, the West Bay Nurses Health Centre, and to various churches, and also the installation of Moby mats at 7 Mile Beach and the Governor's Beach, and one soon to be installed at the Cemetery Beach. As I said, the 7 Mile Beach and Governor's Beach, soon to be Cemetery Beach. These will all improve access to the sea for people with mobility challenges here in West Bay. Through persistent efforts, the long-needed improved seawall, dock and boat launch ramp at the Garvin Park in Batabanu is now almost complete, as well as the installation of the cabanas and playground equipment for the wider community to enjoy. Again, with the support of the government, I was able to fulfill a campaign promise of widening the Batabanoo Road to create pedestrian corridor, as well as establishing a new cemetery off of Willie Farrington Drive and extending the footprint of the one in Bosun Bay by acquiring the adjacent land, thereby ensuring that there will be adequate burial space in West Bay for many years to come. I have also championed the efforts to establish a crosswalk, bathrooms, and enhanced parking and lighting facilities for residents and visitors alike to better enjoy the West Bay Cemetery Beach, all of which have already been completed or are nearing completion. Efforts are also underway for the establishment of a new and long overdue police station for West Bay, with the site currently being cleared and filled. Works will continue during the next government administration. As many of you know, my service to constituents and the community at large extends beyond the ministerial and community level. I've also been privileged to serve continuously as a member of the National Security Council since 2013, and I was elected to serve as the chairperson of the Parliamentary Oversight Committee of the Office of the Ombudsman since June 2017. I've also represented the Cayman Islands internationally on numerous occasions, both during my term as Minister of Education, Employment and Gender Affairs, as well as during my current term as Minister for Financial Services and Home Affairs. Notably and thankfully, I was chosen to be a member of the government's December 2018 constitutional negotiating team, which led to the successful agreement with the United Kingdom government to enhance the Cayman Islands Constitution, providing added protections over domestic affairs for democratically elected governments, and culminating in the renaming of Parliament of the Cayman Islands. Many of you will recall from as far back as 2000, I campaigned heavily on the need for constitutional modernization. Therefore, actively participating as a member of the government's constitutional negotiating team, which led to the successful adoption of the Cayman Islands Constitution Amendment Order 2020, has truly been the pinnacle of an intense yet amazing 8 years of hard work, achieving numerous accomplishments for the Caymanian people and our beautiful country. I would like to say a heartfelt thanks to the Honourable Premier for asking me to serve as a minister in both cabinets and to be a part of 2 consecutive government administrations that have accomplished so much in such a short period of time. I am grateful for the Premier's continued trust, support, and confidence in me through it all. I would also like to say a very special thank you to my fellow members of Cabinet and government. We make a dynamic team, and we have had one of the most successful terms ever, successfully navigating the country through numerous challenges, including that of the COVID-19 pandemic. I would also like to say a heartfelt thank you to the capable and hardworking civil servants that have worked diligently in the various ministries and departments that I have had the privilege to lead over the years. Without you, we as a government, and I as minister, would not have been able to accomplish all that we have for the benefit of the Caymanian people and the country at large during this time. You are often asked to carry out a tremendous amount of work under pressure and within compressed timelines to produce the required results. I'm truly grateful for all that you've done to help me achieve the goals set as minister throughout the years. I would also like to thank my hardworking, loyal, and diligent community liaison officer, Ms. Marina Ebanks, who has been with me for almost the entire time. Marina's service to me and to the community over the years is to be commended, and I am very grateful for her willingness to go above and beyond the call of duty on so many occasions in order to assist the constituents and help organize the many activities coordinated by my West Bay office. Finally, I would like to thank my campaign committee members who helped in one or both of my election campaigns, and the community volunteers who consistently came out and come out to support the effective delivery of the various community events I've organized over the years. There really are too many people to mention by name, but you know who you are. I am deeply touched by the unwavering support that you have all shown, and each of you will always have a special place in my heart. Lastly, I would like to thank you, members of the press. Admittedly, there were times when I wasn't so thankful, but I do appreciate that you play an important role in our society. So thank you for playing that role responsibly. For me, these past 8 years have been an amazing journey of growth and resilience. I've served the people of the Cayman Islands with integrity and determination and with love. Love for my country is what propelled me to step into politics in the first place. I came across a quote recently that I want to share with you. It says, quote, "In the end, we only regret the chances we didn't take, relationships we were afraid to have, and decisions we waited too long to make." End quote. I took a chance by asking to be your representative in 2013 and again in 2017, and you took a chance on me. And although there have been periods of ups and downs, I have no regrets. I am deeply proud of what we have achieved together, and I am deeply proud of the fact that I have accomplished what I set out to accomplish for the people of West Bay, and in particular West Bay South and the entire Cayman Islands. In 2013, I answered the call to serve in public office. However, as I often indicated on the campaign trail, my intention then, as it is now, was not to get a job, but to do a job. I made a promise to myself that should the good people of West Bay and later West Bay South wish for me to be their representative, I would serve as an MLA for at least 2 terms. I have fulfilled my promise to myself and to the people. So in keeping my promise made in 2013 of not intending to become a career politician, it is now therefore left for me to declare that I will not stand for re-election in the upcoming general elections in April 2021. I started my journey to become your representative in 2013 with the campaign slogan, "It's time, West Bay." After serving the country at the highest level as a cabinet minister for 8 consecutive years, having achieved what I set out to do, creating a tangible track record of success in each area of ministerial responsibility I've had during that time, for the benefit of the people and the country as a whole, I believe it's now time to continue my journey, creating new opportunities for growth and development. A political life is about service, and serving the country has been a personal calling and my duty and an absolute honor. This is why my decision to not continue as an elected official beyond this term has weighed so heavily on my mind and my heart. I know that many of you will be extremely sad or concerned to hear that I will not be standing for re-election at this time, as I have received numerous calls and messages urging me to do so and offering support. For that, I am extremely grateful. And I do apologize if I have not had the chance to respond to you personally in this regard. But please rest assured that my decision was not taken lightly or made hastily. As a matter of fact, when asked as far back as last year by various people about standing for re-election, I always responded truthfully that I was considering doing so. Indeed, I thought very carefully about the future of the country and the constituency before coming to this decision. I even carefully considered the timing of this announcement in an attempt to ensure that the legacy that I have built in providing the kind of leadership that you can trust will continue. I know that you have developed trust in me as your representative. You may not have always agreed with my decisions, but I know that you know that I have always served the country with integrity. And more importantly, you know my actions taken as your representative and minister have never been for personal gain. During my time in office, I have always put country first. While today's announcement represents an end of an era, at least for now, there are many exciting prospects ahead, including my ability to continue to serve the country, albeit in a different capacity. I really cannot emphasize enough how deeply indebted I am to the people of West Bay, and more recently West Bay South, for your faith in me and for your overwhelming support. It has been a privilege and an honor to serve you. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart. I'll now give the Premier an opportunity to share his thoughts.
Thank you, Minister. It is with a deep sense of sadness that I am here accompanying Minister Rivers as she has made the announcement of her proposed retirement from politics. I know she has grappled with this decision for quite some time, and she has discussed with me on more than one occasion how I thought she could continue to best serve the country. She did that without actually expressing to me that she was leaving, or proposing to leave, but I've been around long enough to understand such statements, and I myself have grappled with similar decisions from time to time, so I knew she was struggling with the decision. She is doing what very few politicians do. She's leaving on her own terms, which is quite a rarity. I understand entirely her decision at this particular point in her life and her work life. She is an extraordinarily able lawyer, admitted to no less than 4 bars, New York, Toronto, London, as well as Cayman. And she has a range of opportunities presented to her. She's taking up an incredible position in due course, and I entirely understand her reasoning doing that. From the perspective of the government, and a government that is seeking to get a 3rd term in office, her leaving creates a significant void. Made more so, in my estimation, because as our recent survey has determined, her seat was a certain seat for the coalition. But as I've said, I entirely understand her reasoning, and I wish her well in her new endeavor. I think it is only fitting that I spend a little time reflecting on her achievements as a representative and as a cabinet minister. She first made history in May 2013 by winning a seat as an independent candidate to become the second elected member for West Bay, breaking the almost 30-year political monopoly of the UDP, now the CDP, in their stronghold district, and missing out on becoming the first elected member by only 100 votes. She also broke the mold that year by becoming the first woman to represent West Bay in almost 3 decades. In 2013, she also made history by becoming the first independent member of the Legislative Assembly to be offered a position as a member of cabinet. And as most people will recall, before she accepted the position of minister, she first came to the people of West Bay to discuss the matter. That was a source of great frustration to me, trying to put together a government and having offered her a seat in the cabinet, and she just didn't accept it without first getting the endorsement of her constituents. Having been given a choice, she chose to take on responsibility for some of the most challenging portfolios of the day: education, employment, and gender affairs. Remarkably, in just 4 years, great strides were made in all areas of responsibility in her ministry. As we collectively rose to the challenges, Minister Rivers was instrumental in bringing about significant change during her first term and set the critical foundation for more positive change to come in these last 4 years, and indeed beyond. During that first term in office, as a government, we continued to make history and to bring about the changes that we all wanted to see happen in this, our beloved country. With Minister Rivers at the helm, academic graduation requirements were introduced for all public high schools, along with a high honors system promoting excellence. The comprehensive overhaul to the more than 30-year-old Education Act was successfully developed, passed, and adopted, bringing the Act in line with the Cayman Islands Constitution and setting the legislative foundation for and leading to the establishment of an independent inspectorate and quality assurance regime for all education establishments, including all public and private schools. Education became a matter of national importance, and all education institutions, not just public schools, were governed by legislation that creates the much-needed accountability framework for education at all levels. For the first time, the law created a framework and legal obligation which says that no child should be excluded from school because of his or her ability or special needs, and that all education institutions must make reasonable accommodations for every child. For the first time, the law mandated a national curriculum which includes language, mathematics, science, and the requirement to teach Caymanian history and culture in all schools. The number of Caymanian scholarship recipients to pursue higher education, including vocational studies, increased by 42%, from 844 to 1,456 students during her tenure as minister. These accomplishments represent only a very few of the highlights in education achieved during her first term in office. For employment, policy and draft legislation was piloted, and the first national minimum basic wage was established and introduced. A national internship and national apprenticeship program was developed and implemented, with 12 new programs introduced, including Ready to Work.ky, benefiting over 1,000 people by 2017. During that term, the first substantive review of the National Pensions Law was carried out since it was enacted 20 years ago. That review led to the abolition of the statutorily mandated retirement age of 60 years and increased the minimum monthly payout to retirees to be calculated based on a percentage formula determined by the total amount of pensions available and age of the pensioner, and adjusted for inflation on an annual basis. In the area of gender affairs, Minister Rivers convened the first National Conference on Women to be held in Grand Cayman in March 2014, and a similar event took place in Cayman Brac later that year. And the UN Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, also known as CEDAW, was extended to the Cayman Islands in 2016, something that previous governments had attempted to achieve for many years. Minister Rivers was also the driving force behind the production of the historic documentary, Her Story is Our History, the women's suffrage movement in the Cayman Islands, which was first aired in April 2017. Through this well-researched and put together visual depiction, we will always remember the struggles and voices of some of those brave women of the day, which made it possible for women to be able to vote and stand for election in the Cayman Islands. We will always remember the likes of Miss Georgette Ebanks as being one of the original 24 women from Georgetown to stand up and speak up for equality. And we will always remember the likes of women around the country, women like Miss Genevieve Henning, who joined the call for equality when the petition was taken to the districts some 10 years later and signed by some 300 women strong. Thanks to the work commissioned by Minister Rivers, we will never forget their story, our history. And now we have an accessible tool, a short video that can be used to educate generations to come. In 2017, Minister Rivers made history again, with her constituents decisively casting their vote in the first ever general elections held under the one-person, one-vote electoral scheme. She once again broke the political mold, this time becoming the first MLA and later MP to represent the constituents of West Bay South, winning roughly 54% of the votes cast and becoming the first cabinet minister to successfully be re-elected for a second term after serving as a first-term minister. And once again, I asked her to serve in my cabinet, this time assuming the critically important role of Minister of Financial Services and Home Affairs. Over the course of this term, Minister Rivers often accompanied me or herself led extensive efforts to engage with local industry, media, and international policymakers, including UK and EU parliamentarians and US senators and members of the US House of Congress on several key financial services matters. Key and groundbreaking financial services legislation was also developed, passed and enacted during her tenure as minister, including the country's innovative regulatory framework governing virtual assets, as well as the establishment and enhancement of Cayman's economic substance regime. Enhanced regulatory oversight of and investor protections for all forms of investment funds were also developed and implemented. With the support of the government, she was able to significantly increase the budgetary and human resources of the ministry and CIMA by approximately 85%, with much needed staff complement increases ranging between 160% and 250% for the Department of Financial Services, Policy and Legislation, and the Department of International Tax Cooperation, respectively, and substantially enhanced the financial support to Cayman Finance by over 250%, better equipping the various public and private sector stakeholders responsible for protecting and promoting financial services, the most significant pillar of Cayman's economy, which despite increased regulation over the past several years has continued to grow by 2% year over year. As Minister for Home Affairs, Minister Rivers also invests a significant amount of time and energy supporting national security and public safety in the Cayman Islands. These efforts have resulted in the completion of a number of critical projects thus far, including upgrades to the National Public Safety Communications radio system, the implementation of enhanced offender supervision and rehabilitation programs in both the prison and the community, significant investment in training, recruitment, facilities, and life-saving equipment for the fire service, and key amendments to the disaster preparedness and hazard management law, which strengthen the Cayman Islands' resilience to hazards through the legislative establishment of the National Disaster Fund and the launch of phases 1 and 2 of the National Emergency Notification System. On her tenure, she successfully advocated for much-needed human and budgetary resources to support all of the critical public safety agencies, especially the Cayman Islands Fire Service and Her Majesty's Cayman Islands Prison Services, and significant progress has been made to address many legacy issues on all fronts. That, I believe, is a remarkable inventory of success over the course of 2 terms. And when you bear in mind that hither to her being appointed as minister, she had absolutely no legislative experience, I believe, based on my more than 20 years as a member of the Legislative Assembly and now Parliament, she has done a remarkable job as minister. And the country will miss her contribution, and I know I certainly will, if and when, as I hope, we form the next administration.
Thank you very much, Premier. Thank you for being here, and thank you for highlighting the service that I've given over all these years. And just want to again thank you all for coming and ask if there's any questions that you may have. Obviously, it's more about making this declaration and informing you and helping you to inform the wider public as efficiently as possible, because I certainly didn't have the opportunity to reach out and speak to every single person for logistic reasons, but I wanted my constituents to hear this firsthand from me in a way that they get the message live and direct. And so again, thank you all for tuning in, and I do appreciate you being here as well.
Good afternoon, Minister Rivers, for the last time, I should say.
Well, I'm here till at least the new government is sworn in, so yes, I'll still be around, just won't be standing for re-election.
Okay, so first of all, the question on everyone's minds, what's next for you? The Premier hinted at a position that you will be taking up. Would you share with us what that is?
There are lots of options, and that's the thing that is most exciting. The very first thing on my agenda is to get some rest. And then it's looking at how best I can continue in my own personal journey, but also in the journey to help the country in whatever capacity I can, as public service is something that's been in my DNA since I came of age, so to speak. So I'm just very excited about what the future holds.
Now, before making this announcement, you faced a lot of heat from the public in particular. You not saying anything about the McKeever Bush issue and his position as House Speaker. How much of an impact that was in your decision to step aside from political life?
My position taken really has nothing to do with anybody else but me, and looking introspectively. As I said before, I tried to put it in context, because when I first got into politics, I didn't intend to stay in politics for the rest of my life. I got into politics in late 30s, still relatively young, and many opportunities for various career progressions were at, in my mind. But certainly at the time, I answered the call to serve because there was a critical need at that time. I felt that I've given the service that I committed to give. And at this time, it's a bit of an inflection point as to whether or not I would continue on and kind of eventually, I guess, become the career politician that I said that I wasn't going to be, or look at this point in time and make a decision about what the future should hold.
Now, Premier, you talked about the value of having Ms. Rivers in the coalition, and now she's not going to be there. How does this impact your plans for the coalition manifesto that you've been dropping hints about, and your plans to put together a possible team in the government?
Well, I've known that Minister Rivers was not going to stand, so that has already been taken into consideration. As I say, obviously, a certain seat that we had is not there now. So, but I am talking with other people, as I tend to do, and we'll see where we get to. But I am very, very comfortable at this point in the progress that we have made in building the kind of team that I believe will be able to continue to give this country good government following the general elections.
I'm curious.
I'm more comfortable really than I've ever been in any election campaign.
Okay, thank you. I'm just curious, Ms. Rivers, is there anyone in particular that you're prepared to endorse as maybe your replacement? Premier, same question. Is there any particular candidate that's in the race that you guys are looking at?
Stay tuned.
Premier?
We're talking to a number of people, so we'll have to see where we get to. I'm not in a position where I can say that we have an agreement with someone in West Bay South to become part of the coalition. If I did, I would say so. You know. Mm-hmm. But we are talking to a number of people, and I believe most of the persons that we are aware of who will contest that seat would be prepared to work with the government.
So that means the PPM, the Progressives, would not be fielding their own candidates in West Bay South? Or are you not prepared to say that right now?
Well, I this close to nomination day, that's probably the case, yes.
All right.
But I don't rule out anything until, I've been around this long enough to know that things happen. This announcement may trigger a different, a reaction from people we haven't thought about. So I don't rule many things out at this stage.
Thank you. Just straight in, we understand Andre Ebanks is looking at running in West Bay South, leaving that position open. And would that be a position that you've been offered, Miss Rivers?
Sorry? Okay.
Andre Ebanks, our representative in London, he's obviously resigned from that position, and I understand that he is planning on running in West Bay South. So would that be a position that you might have been offered by the government?
Well, I don't
No.
like to get into speculation.
No, I can tell you, no, absolutely categorically, no.
Okay.
I don't want a story running on that.
I know, right?
In that case, as we understand that Mr. Ebanks is, who was formerly a member, or at least very close to the PPM, obviously that's, are you endorsing him if he's running?
We'll see.
Okay. Walkers, is that also on the cards for you?
There are many options.
Okay, fine.
Highly qualified.
You don't want to talk about your new job. We'll have to go back to talk about the speaker then, won't we? So, you've had a lot of, as Reshma said, you've faced a lot of criticisms. So the question is, why didn't you speak out about what Bush did, especially as you were formerly the Gender Affairs Minister, and especially now as you don't have to worry about treading a political tightrope. Why didn't you speak out and say what you really felt about what happened about that conviction and him retaining the trappings of office, even after, the Premier made a tactical move stating he would then not be Speaker, but we all know he still is Speaker, he still retains those trappings of office. So why haven't you spoken out about it?
Well, Wendy, if there's one thing I learned in this life of politics is there are times when you need to speak your truth, and there are other times when your truth should speak for itself. I know that the fact that I have not spoken publicly on the matter left people wondering where I stood or where I stand. So let me be clear. Far too many people in this country have been affected by violence in one form or another. I do not condone violence against women in any form. In fact, again, going back to my truth speaking for itself, a big part of my push to have the CEDAW Convention extended to the Cayman Islands was to create an accountability mechanism whereby the country must report on what efforts are being taken to promote gender equality, including the goal of eradicating violence against women. And that is my truth.
Oh, okay, so would you have supported him being removed from office? Because that's the issue that people are concerned about, is that we all stood back, you all stood back in the Parliament and allowed him to retain this prestigious position. So would you have asked him to, if you were in a position to do so, would you have asked him to step down?
Well, again, it's a moot point because Parliament has been dissolved.
But he still has his job.
No, he doesn't, Wendy. There are no members of the legislative or of the Parliament currently. It can be recalled, but there are no members of Parliament currently. That was the whole point of dissolving Parliament. There's nobody in the Speaker's post any more than there's anybody as a opposition member. Only Cabinet has retained its office constitutionally.
I think Mr. Bush disagrees with that. He seemed to think when he spoke on For the Record last week that he retains his job.
I don't know what Mr. Bush said or says, but I know what the Constitution says.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, back to Ms. Rivers. The other issue that I think maybe other critics would have said about you is that, yeah, definitely, I think everybody said, you've worked hard and you've been honest and integrity, but there's an issue of there was a lot of hope that you would perhaps be very different, but in actual fact you got sucked into the status quo. That's what people say, and they're a bit disappointed that you didn't make more significant changes. So there's a couple of women coming up in the next election behind you that are younger as well, and that again people are saying, oh, hopefully they'll break the mold of the status quo that people are uncomfortable with. What advice do you give to those women about not getting sucked in?
Well, as I said, there are many lessons that you learn in politics, and one of them as well is that people will say lots of things. And the advice that I give and that I would give to anyone is when you step into this arena, know yourself, be comfortable in yourself, and don't be afraid to do what's right, whether it's politically popular or otherwise.
Last one, the Ombudsman's Committee. Can you give us some details of what that committee, what reports it ever did or what it ever actually achieved during the time that you were chairing it?
Essentially, all of the reports would be filed with the Legislative Assembly, so that's public information. The only report that's outstanding would be for 2021, and that would go forward at the next sitting of Parliament.
Yeah, I think you misunderstand me. No, I'm not talking about their annual reports. I'm talking about what reports did the committee do?
Those reports are filed in Cabinet, in Parliament as well.
Okay.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me. I have a few questions for Tara, Ms. Rivers. Many of your constituents I'm sure will be very unhappy with you moving on. What advice do you have for them, knowing that they would prefer to see you stay, and if they want to know who they should vote for and so on, what advice would you have to give to those constituents?
Well, the campaign is just starting, so to speak, even though I won't be on the ballot, and they won't have the opportunity to vote for me. And as I said, and I want to take this opportunity, and thank you, Ralph, for that question, to once again say a big heartfelt thanks to all of the people, and there have been many, many people who I know support me and still support me, and as you said, would prefer that they had the opportunity to vote for me. But I, as one of my key supporters when I had this conversation beforehand, and I had to keep those discussions very close, obviously. As one said, you're not stepping away, you're stepping aside. And we expect that I will continue to be very active in the community, as I always have been, in a different capacity, of course. But a big part of why I wrestled with this decision for such a long time was to make sure that there was still that continuity of representation in West Bay South, the kind of leadership that they can trust. And I am still very committed to ensuring that we try as best as possible to continue that legacy.
Okay, second question. The number of men representing the country in the LA Parliament far exceed the number of women. Do you anticipate, or do you foresee, or do you encourage more women to become representatives, or to run for representation? Because we have heard that the country probably needs a few more women in the House.
Absolutely. I mean, I put my money where my mouth is, so to speak, and when I stepped into this arena to take up this position, and thankfully I was supported overwhelmingly both times by the constituency and the district that I represented. I think that the voice that women bring and the perspective that women bring is absolutely something that the country would benefit from, and I believe that women should be represented at all levels of decision making in the country, from the boardrooms to whatever else, and the governance of the country is key. And so I just want to say again, thank you to the Premier for giving me that opportunity to not just, my constituents elected me, and I thank them for that. The Premier gave me the opportunity to serve as minister at the highest level in the governance of the country, and I actually encourage that women to step forward, to be able to be given those opportunities and taking up the mantle at all levels.
Okay, thank you. One final question. You were an independent candidate, and you were successful, and we are seeing in the upcoming elections many more independent candidates. Sort of many, as people say, they're posturing themselves for places within the government. I've heard you in referring to the progressive-led coalition many times. And my question to you is, how do you describe the relationship with the progressive-led administration? And also, how do you describe your experience as an independent working alongside an existing government?
Well, certainly, again, when you serve in cabinet, the overarching thing that binds you as a cabinet is a collective responsibility. So I may have been, and I have been, an independently elected candidate becoming a member of parliament, but as a member of cabinet, those responsibilities supersede and trumps everything, because that is what you sign up to do and become once you accept a position as minister in the cabinet. Otherwise, the country couldn't function if you had those type of, dissension publicly about a decision taken by cabinet. I think the strength that I brought, and I thank the Premier for really highlighting those areas of strength. A lot of that had to do with me and my personality. I never was a member of the party, but I felt that I was able to make a contribution at that level because of the type of discussions that we had. And I think it can be done, but I want to say to any independent candidate running, no man or woman is an island. You need to be able to work with people. And so this notion that because you're elected as an independent, you can just switch on the tap to distance yourself or disassociate yourself from the government of which you are a part. If you are a member of government, that is. I mean, opposition can, which I've never been. I've been a member of cabinet for the entire time, so I can't speak to the opposition perspective. But certainly if your goal is to be a member of government, you need to understand and appreciate that you have to work with people, and sometimes that means making decisions, making compromises that are in the best interest of the country, and there will be times for discussion. I said often to the Premier in terms of caucus wall, if walls could talk, people will see really the healthy level of debate and discussion that we have before coming to any decision. But as an independent, I've always been very forthright with giving my views, and I think that just makes for healthier decision making.
Thank you very much. That's it for me. Anyone else?
I just have one final question. And this one is for the Premier. If you would like to address, Isaac Rankin has sent out a statement addressing rumors about a meeting that you had with him last night. Would you like to address those rumors? Are you joining forces with Mr. Rankin?
I've seen Isaac's statement, and I think the statement says all that needs to be said. This was not some secret meeting. I was invited to talk to his committee. Isaac, I think, is quite correctly and sensibly positioning himself and distinguishing himself from Arden McLean by saying, I do not want to be a member of the opposition. East End has had an opposition member for 12 years, 3 consecutive terms, and it has resulted in very little that has benefited East End. And so Isaac and his committee are continuing to explore how best they can position him as a candidate to become a member of the next administration. Currently, his committee, and I think most of the country, views the progressive led coalition as really being the only organized entity there is contesting these elections, and therefore the most likely to form the next administration. It's just very sensible politics. There's no secret about it. I am talking to representatives from almost every constituency in Cayman because we are doing everything we can to form the next administration.
As we're still talking about the campaign, can you give us some explanation as to why the health minister might have allocated those funds for roof repairs in East End, in Bodden Town East, when it's your ministry that transfer payment went to for roof repairs? I remember there was a Finance Committee hearing where you discussed it. So I'm just wondering how this has happened, and if you could explain whether you have any issues with what he's done.
Well, I heard him explaining to someone from the Compass yesterday. I don't have all the details, but this is a fairly routine thing. They sent out one letter, but the issue, as I best understand it, and I hate to address things when I don't have all the facts, but this was a question of the funds weren't available in the last fiscal year, but they became available when essentially the government budget or allocations get topped up, because the budget is a 2-year budget, but you work in 1-year cycles. And so when the funding became available, it's not just that particular issue. Right across the Cayman Islands, you will see that East End, Northside, Georgetown, where cases had been made that vulnerable people who needed assistance to get their homes repaired had been approved. The funding has been made available because we are now in a new fiscal year. But I'm sure he's going to, or his ministry is going to issue a statement in due course, but I heard him addressing a similar question by the Compass yesterday, not on air, but after the press conference. So there's nothing untoward at all about what transpired. It's just because we're in that season now that it's become an issue.
And on that note,
sorry, just to clarify, you said yourself in that Finance Committee meeting that the money should go through your ministry, through the Community Affairs and NC, the Needs Assessment Unit, because there were concerns about abuse.
Yes.
And you'd specifically said
Right.
it's your ministry that deals with it. So I'm just trying to understand how it is that it can come from his ministry's money.
I don't know what
Sorry.
I don't know what the technical details are. Ministers don't deal with the technical details, right? We don't have the ability to transfer anything. Ministers give approvals. That's all we can do. I don't know the precise details about it, but what I do know is that because of COVID, the various committees which were set up to deal with these things were unable to act. But in the meantime, when the rains still come, the breeze still blows, and vulnerable people who need their homes repaired need to get that work done. So I want to check this before I make a comprehensive statement. I'm sure his ministry is going to do so, because as I say, I hate to speculate. And I just don't know all of those details, except what I've just said to you is that there is absolutely nothing untoward. And that's not the only instance. The letter that somebody photocopied and sent to Kmart Road, that's not the only instance. You'll find a number of them right across the districts where cases were properly made for assistance. And the funding has just become available since January.
On that note, I know everybody's chomping at the bit.
Surely we can end on a happier note than that.
Yeah, I mean, unless there's any other questions that are kind of directly related to this particular.
Should any money for your constituents to get their ears done?
Thank you for coming. Thank you all for listening in. Many people are tuning in, and I'm sure, as you said, people have opinions, and some people have 2 or 3 opinions depending on the time of the day, time of the year, time of the month. But again, I just really want to end on saying I am greatly appreciative for all of the support and encouragement that I've gotten from so many people throughout the district for many years. And as I said, to coin a phrase of one of my key supporters, I'm not stepping away, I'm just stepping aside, and I'm still going to be here for the country in whatever capacity that I can serve in the future. So the future is bright, and I'm very excited about it. So thank you all, and have a good day, good afternoon.